What you're about to engage in is a special recording of the Equity Challenge brought to you through United Way of Rhode Island in partnership with Slate Media. My name's Kevin Mata, and I'll be your facilitator and guide for this year's Equity Challenge journey. These are real stories told by real people meant to humanize the purpose of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and actually highlight the unity behind it. Welcome to the journey. We're excited to have you here. All right, welcome. Thanks so much for being here as a part of the Equity Challenge conversation. Today's day 3, and our theme is around diversity, equity, and inclusion and how it's intentional. So why don't you tell us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'm Jason Roias. I'm a relationship manager in corporate engagement at United Way of Rhode Island. Also do a lot of different community work on the side, also a lot of political work as well.
Great.
I'm Travis Escobar, Director of Business Development at United Way of Rhode Island. Outside of that, also a co-owner of Island Coquito and president of Millennial Rhode Island.
Awesome. Yeah. So both of you guys bring a lot of diverse experience, right? And a lot of more than just who you are in your day-to-day, right, jobs. And so I thought about this conversation being one of the most important pieces around diversity, equity, and inclusion because we recognize that DEI, right? It's currently being talked about a lot currently in the media. Folks don't know what that means. DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion. But it shows up in a lot of ways, right? Because we all have things like bias. We accidentally exclude people or overly include people. And we want to make sure that things aren't just happening just because they're happening. And our brains work in such a way where we automatically gravitate towards a certain person, right? And based on their personality, their types. Tell me a little bit about what does DEI mean for you?
Yeah, so I believe DEI is really focused on how do you sort of make a community better? How do you make a business better? How do you make really just a team just better? How do you make the world just more inclusive, focusing on how do you support people of all different backgrounds and experiences? And I think in terms of sort of our work at United Way of Rhode Island, or how we partner with different corporations, or how we are with different communities, we're always looking to decide either how do we invest our dollars in the best way that has the most impact, what type of folks that we're bringing in within our organization, and how we're fully sort of like supporting the people that we're looking to serve. And that's at the heart of, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I think it's everything that I try to strive to do as a leader in terms of promoting when I'm in different rooms. And if I might be the only person of color, or I might be the only young person, or someone's calling me and is like, hey, I want a young person on the board, and they want you, Travis. And I'm like, well, there's other young people.
There's other voices, right?
There's other voices. There's other people of color. There's other people with, talent, and treasure to be able to support your organization. So I always like to uplift that whole aspect of, no, we need to be looking at different organizations, different groups, and also expand our sort of outreach practices to, again, make our organization better, the product better, whatever we're looking to do within our work is always going to improve when we're focused on and looking through everything through DEI.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, to add to what Travis was saying, I think for me, at the core of it, it's really bringing folks in, right? I think, as a white man, right, like I have the privilege of being a white man, right? Like every room that I'm in, it's usually a lot of me. And so bringing folks in, whether different view of the world or even just the view of the workplace, right? For me personally, I've always wanted to live my life. I'd rather be in an ocean full of diverse thought and diverse opinion and diverse experiences than like a shallow pool of the status quo, right? And so I think it's just really uplifting voices and bringing folks in.
Yeah, I love that you both talked about, right, an action behind it, right? It's about bringing people in, lifting other people up. And again, today's conversation is really about the intentionality behind DEI, right? Because it takes intentionality. It doesn't just happen automatically, right? It's making you think about what group am I in? What setting am I in, right? That shallow pool versus large waters. It's who am I bringing into the table as well. What do we do though when we're, when we're of our generation and we're going into workplaces and we oftentimes hear like statements like, we've always done it this way. How do we interrupt that? How do we change that process and that thinking? Because we know that we've always done it that way. Really what it means behind it is we don't have room for diversity of thought or experience or change.
Yeah, I mean, I always want to push back on that, right? Like if something that you do is, what you've done all the time, it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do or the right way to go about it. And oftentimes, again, I go back to it. It just, I think you're just dragging on status quo, right? If you're not changing, if there's no innovation, there's no room for growth.
Yeah, I love that you hit on that. I remember years ago, I did a presentation for a company around diversity and inclusion, and I showed off the commercial from like a 1974 Toyota Corolla, and they Toyota kept proclaiming that year that it was the best car that they had ever made. It's like the Toyota Corolla. It's a two-door. It's hard. It's working. And everybody was like, "This is the best car ever." But then without that innovation, we wouldn't be where we are now, right? And so I showed them the new commercial of the Toyota Corolla. By the way, Toyota Corolla is not sponsoring this, neither is Toyota. But
If they want to,
they want to, right? They can. But right, backup cameras, lane sensitivity, right? Like making sure you remember that you have a passenger in the back. I'm like, that is innovation and change that's only brought through with intentionality of bringing diversity into the mix. How do you do that with your day to day, Travis?
a lot of my lived experience growing up in Providence, Rhode Island, and professionally, I think in terms of this conversation has been around sort of like age, being a young leader. Even I'm getting older, but in terms of the past 10 years with Millennial Rhode Island, and being, but at certain points, one of the few Latinos or people of color in certain spaces. So when I've been in boardrooms where I'm the only individual, and then you hear older, a lot of times whiter sort of spaces saying, "We've done it, this way. We've always done it this way." It's sometimes also hard to challenge that, but it's always been, I guess, unfortunately, like a burden to like bring up a different perspective, even if I'm the only sort of voice at the table, but also try to bring a business case or a community case, a community value of why we should be thinking about, doing an initiative differently, doing an event differently, who we're reaching out to our board, in terms of like getting board and committee members, our programming, our branding, our marketing, making sure things are more inclusive, and how do we attract different audiences and the people that we serve. So I think just coming with my lived experience and trying to be always looking to be an advocate in those spaces, especially if there's spaces where I feel that there's value and there's potential. And one of the things that is holding them back is, how are we attracting other audiences? How are we making sure our leadership, our board, our senior staff members is diverse as it could be? I mean, we know we could see around different nonprofit boards in terms of it's getting older. Our sector is getting older. We could do a lot more work in making sure it's diverse. Definitely in the corporate sector, right? In terms of boardrooms and senior leaderships. But at the end of the day, our generation, millennial, the younger generation, it is getting more diverse. So if you want to be able to, attract customers, attract donors, just get people to support what you're doing, and also making sure you're having as much of a value and impact in whatever you're doing, corporate or nonprofit, you have to live with inclusivity. You have to make sure your leadership decision is as diverse as possible, and the people that you're bringing in is on the backbone of through the lens of DEI.
Yep. And the hardship of that, right, is that again, intentionality requires slowing down.
Yeah.
It means I have to sit here and listen to Jason. It means I have to sit here and listen to Travis and what they're gonna say, right?
And you get to do that every day, right?
Right. I get to do that every day. I'm blessed in my role.
Yeah.
And but to that point, right, it's like takes intention to listen to even this conversation today, right? For someone to slow down and go, wait, there is a nugget in there of truth or something that could be an aha moment for me if I just slowed down. But our brains don't work that way. We're working fast. Our workplaces usually only promote us or give us bonuses and opportunities when we meet targets, when you exceed, work harder, have better outcomes. But there's no benefit or plus to actually slowing down. But what we do know is that it's incredible when we are able to do that, when we're able to sit down and kind of have these conversations. How do you see that happening for you in your life?
Yeah, I mean, it's in the campaign world, right? Like it's so quick, it's so fast, and filling key roles is so important. And again, we have to do it at lightning speed. So I think like just an example of how I've been able to like slow things down and just think about the bigger picture. There was one moment in a campaign very early on in my political organizing career where we had to fill a key role, and typically you go to the same network of folks, right? Like the same organizations, the same organizers. And I remember one of my mentors, you know, we were looking at applications and folks that were applying for this key role. They asked me who isn't applying, and
That's a great question.
that made me take a couple steps back and really think about that, right? Like who isn't applying for this job or this role? And so after that, I've been so incredibly intentional with any campaigns that I work on. The folks who fill these vital roles, whether it's a field director, whether it's a treasurer, whatever the case is, they have to look like the community and be from the community that, we're trying to win in or, try to get elected in.
Absolutely. And I love that question. I just came back from a 3-day conference, and shout out to Paul Long, who quoted this, but he said that he does this practice. It's called a brain pattern interruption, BPI, brain pattern interruption. And he says that he does it so subtly, but it's to kind of like cause your brain to rethink and kind of have that jolt in the moment. And one of the things he said that he does is, mostly whenever you call somebody's cell phone or their work line, it says like, "Hi, you've reached Kevin at such and such number. Sorry, I can't make it right now. If you leave me a name and number, get back to you as soon as I can." His says, "What's good? You know who you've reached. Let me know what you want to tell me. But if you really want me to get back to you, tell me who your celebrity crush is." And he says that all the time. He gets people that are like, go through and they're just like, we need to schedule you for this and that. But finally in there, someone actually might go like, it was Hugh Jackman or Angelina Jolie or something. And he goes, so when he's able to call people back, he goes, when did it start with Hugh Jackman, right? Was it like in this movie or that movie? Which Angelina Jolie was it? And it's such a way for us to remember that, again, it takes intentionality, right? But how do we just continue to do that work and slow it down? And how are we able to actually shift that process even when our workplaces don't always let that happen, right? And life is busy.
Yeah. Yeah. Life is busy. And as someone, in terms of a lot of the work that I'm doing, sometimes I don't actually want to slow down. I want to be able to make decisions pretty quick. But I think when leaders do that, of organizations or entrepreneurs, I think you can lend yourself to some errors, right? In terms of if you're not taking into account either, a marketing campaign that you're putting out in the community, a hiring process, or et cetera. I think that when you're able to sort of slow down, and I think in Rhode Island, we all know somebody. So I think it's easier,
do.
especially in the hiring conversation, like, oh, I know that person. Or like for a board, I've been in rooms like, oh, who do we know? Right? In terms of, we're going to have a new board seat. Who do we know? Instead of just like, what if it was just like an open application and you're interviewing people, and then maybe you're able to get someone that you didn't think of that could actually really fit your board, as opposed to asking, in some cases, like a non-diverse board, who do you know? Well, what are you going to ultimately end with?
Correct. The circle is small,
circle.
right?
Yeah.
And so
And then, those infrastructures then asking, well, why are we not getting more younger people to be involved? Why are we not getting a diverse applicant pool for our senior leaders, or just for jobs to come and join our organization? Because I think, especially around it starts with a conversation, who do you know? As opposed to like thinking about how do you sort of outreach to get the best talent, the best thoughts, the best ideas, to build whatever you're doing, whether in community, entrepreneurship, big corporations.
yeah, and to that point, I think it goes back to what you were saying, right? That question of who hasn't applied.
Yeah.
And maybe even asking why haven't they? And it's because, we didn't post it publicly, or
Yeah,
we didn't.
changing, maybe there's some coded language in there. Maybe the job description is a bit wonky. Like you have to change the language. I think I think you were hitting on this. For me, the process is so important to me, right? The process for anything, right? Whether it's baking a cake, whether it's hiring personnel, I think the process is so important. And, sometimes the process stays the same, right? Like if you're baking a cake,
Usually, yeah.
maybe
You stay within the line.
to stay within like,
Be baking some cakes.
I'm out here.
I'm not a baker at all, so
I'm
Good for you.
But like, but that process may stay the same, but the process of hiring an applicant may be a bit different.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so I just always think about that. Like, how can I challenge myself a bit of changing the process of things that I do, like go about doing things? Maybe it's like the process of like who I get advice from or input from, who I center conversations around. And like I just feel like we often fall into these societal patterns and like just fixing that and making sure that we are a bit more intentional and we are a bit more inclusive, because I mean we know that equity is not something that's accidental, right? Like that it's
No.
on purpose.
Yeah.
It's on purpose, and we have to make sure we are living life like equity is on purpose every single day.
Yeah. Right now we're going through the hiring process at work, as you all know, for another role in HR. And I actually scrubbed all the data from the resumes, which is like a standard good practice, right? So I removed everyone's name, I removed their education, I removed their dates of work experience and like all that stuff. And I put together a small group of individuals that I thought would be helpful in the process. And the first question they asked me was, where are all their names and details? And I was like, I know. And I was like, I know this is frustrating. And they go, well, it's making it really hard for me to really be able to understand the resume. And I go, well, that's the intention of it. The intention of it is to not go, oh, I see Travis's name. I know Travis, like he's in the good list or in the go list.
Yeah.
It's meant to be, does this person actually qualify? Do they actually have the skill sets for it? And that is a practice of diversity and inclusion. But most folks think that diversity and inclusion might hinder the application process. And actually, what we're doing is we're saying, no, we're interrupting your bias. We want you to slow down and actually think about it. And it was funny because even yesterday, they pushed back on me again a little bit because I gave them a deadline. And to give me back their score sheets on the resumes. And they said, can you help me prioritize like who are the top 3 or 4 candidates? And I said, no, you have to go through it because that is the intentionality behind this. If I even give you a glimpse of who the top 3 or 4 are, you might mistakenly already have a positive view or a bias to them, a halo effect where you're going, well, Kevin said it's these top 3 or 4. Let me forget the rest. I was like, no, I want you to intentionally go through it. But does it take time? Does it feel like an extra burden? Does it feel like that? But does anyone lose out from that experience?
No.
No, right?
No.
I think everyone wins.
Yeah. And I think it's also helping, folks get to an interview, which is the biggest aspect when you're reviewing resumes, and especially in Rhode Island, right, where everyone knows everybody, right? You don't want that like, oh, I just know this name, they're gonna get an interview. I think that's be able to help out, because in the interview process, to be able to meet people, that's where you're gonna be able to see, if that person's actually qualified. If that person's gonna fit the role for the team.
Yeah. So for folks listening in or watching, give us a takeaway as to what is one decision-making practice, either big or small, that we can put into place to center intentionality, right, around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Something simple. What's your takeaway?
That's a good question. Travis, do you
And
want
who's your celebrity crush?
my celebrity crush has always been Jessica Alba.
Okay, Jessica Alba. You heard it here first.
Jessica Alba's she's the light.
We'll leave it there.
What am I?
Yes,
So we could- but I think like one thing. I'm sorry. I think the question was just what's one
What's
thing.
one thing? Yeah.
I just think challenging yourself. Like I really do believe it just comes from challenging yourself and just making sure that you are not always around the same group of folks, right? Like you are not having the same conversations, and in that your process is always changing and ever evolving. I think like one reflection that I have just even from this year is just like how I facilitate conversations. You'll enjoy this, and you'll enjoy this.
I
as well.
won't, apparently.
There's a 21st century poet by the name of Kendrick Lamar, right?
Kendrick Lamar.
And Kendrick Lamar once said, sit down, be humble, right? Like, and that line is always.
He did say that. That song, by the way, if you're ever taking a spin class,
It's a good
best song ever, because I used to have a spin instructor that would make us go up and down and up and down. So great song. But yes, keep going. Kendrick Lamar.
No, I mean it's the line has always stuck with me, not just like some sort of weird like self like deprecating way, but it's just like sit down, like be humble, listen, relax, and just Like sometimes the greatest leaders aren't the ones who are the folks who are the loudest or the most confident. It's the ones who just sit back and listen. And so I've been really trying to be intentional about that. And so I think just to go back to this, it's challenging yourself.
Yeah, I appreciate that. How about for you, Travis?
My celebrity crush is Marcella Betancourt.
Okay, great. Marcella, you heard it here.
Safe answer.
I love that you
sleeping on
did
the couch
not.
tonight.
You're sleeping on a couch. Yes.
Heidi, I love you. I love
Heidi,
I-
I'm sorry that I brought this up, Heidi.
For intentionality, I think it goes back to, I guess my message would be to leaders, to people who are maybe in that case where they are the youngest, only person of color in different spaces. It's kind of like living your purpose. And I think especially for leaders in corporate or a nonprofit, if you look around your table, if the senior leaders are not reflective of the community you're looking to serve, question why is that?
Yeah.
You know, like if you're really living within your purpose, then you should be questioning, how do you make sure your leaders, your advisors are as diverse and fits the audience you're looking to do? And I think in big corporations, especially when you have boards and senior leaders, and we all know the challenges in different sectors, big money corporations, in terms of the lack of diversity. If you're living your purpose in terms of what's the best possible product, how am I looking to drive either, change, but which also change comes with, potentially more revenue for companies. It's gonna happen through making sure your decisions are within diversity, equity, and inclusion, and also making sure that the audience that you're looking to serve, the demographic, the customers you're looking to serve, the people around you, the leaders, the boarders, reflect that community, because that's how you're going to be able to make the best decisions. Whether, again, nonprofit, corporate, we're all looking to drive to be the best organization, to be the best companies that we can be. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is through diversity, equity, inclusion. It's not shying away from it, right? It's actually diving in deeper, because all our population is changing every single day, and it's only becoming more diverse. And we have money to spend, and we have money to donate. So if you're not reflecting, again, your leadership and your boards around diversity, equity, and inclusion, you're just going to lose out.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, I think, again, so you both talked about it. It's that challenge, right? It's taking that step. It's that intentionality to slow down, look at it, lean into something that's most likely a little bit uncomfortable, but everyone is always going to win, right? There's always a win behind it. You get better feedback, you get stronger customers, you get stronger benefits within all of it, right? We see it with employees retention, that when they feel like there's an intentionality behind it, when I see you and I see you, there's a connection there, right? That makes people want to continue to stay and come back and continue to do business with you. So I think for me, one of my practices around intentionality is to stop answering people like short messages when it's like, hey, how are you? And just saying good, or like living the dream, or, busy. I think I actually want to be more purposeful around taking that minute with someone, right? Because we're always in a rush. We're running from meeting to meeting. We're probably already behind for another meeting.
Yeah.
And just going like, actually analyzing myself. How am I doing? I'm physically well. I'm healthy. This morning, I asked Carlos from the Slate Studio how he was doing. And he says, do you want the real answer? And I said, yes. And he said, I'm physically healthy, and that makes me feel good. And I said, that's what I want to hear.
Yeah.
And so how do we stop and slow down and create that moment for someone where they're able to be seen and actually able to reflect on who they are and what they're bringing to the table?
That's really interesting. Yeah.
So I'll leave you all with that. And we do know that because we rushed you, I kind of put pressure on you to answer who your celebrity crush was. You immediately went with Jessica Alba. And so do you want to retract, change that statement?
Yeah, no, it's Heidi Silverio.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Heidi Silverio.
That's intentionality. That's time, right? We slow down. So I appreciate you both so much for being here with us. If you're listening in, we'd love for you to continue to stay along the journey. Again, today's day 3 around intentionality, and we'll see you tomorrow for day 4. Thanks.